You guys, Stockaholics, I appreciate you guys being here today. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about bears, or could be somebody who's just has a negative outlook on a company. It might even be somebody who is so convinced that the company is doing something wrong or is going to fail, they might be willing to short that company as well. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because I think a lot of times these bears or people who are fundamentally short, they get unfairly criticized in a market. And I think that if you're a long only investor, which I myself am, and I think most of us probably here are, I think that even though that we may be long only investor, that we should still listen to these kinds of shorts, especially if they're involved in companies we're in, because I think they can provide a lot of value.
American songwriter Paul Simons once said, "A man sees what he wants to see and disregards the rest." But that doesn't apply to you, right? Well, maybe that's just because you don't want it to. Like it or not, we as human beings tend to think that our initial opinions are correct, and when presented with the facts, we pick out the ones that suit our presumptions best. This is called confirmation bias, or the tendency to favor information that confirms one's own assumptions or preconceptions, whether they're true or not. Experts describe this behavior with a simple analogy. A Texas sharpshooter decides to go out and practice his shooting on a barn. He unloads dozens of bullets randomly and spots a few clusters of bullet holes. He then paints a bullseye over the clusters, making him seem like a really good shot. Sounds weird? It's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, and your brain does it all the time. Why does this matter? Take a trip back to 1960, during the Kennedy-Nixon presidential debates. People who watched the debate on television saw a disheveled Nixon contrasted with the handsome and confident Kennedy. By looking at the person, they began focusing on points where Kennedy won because they wanted him to win. Contrast this with the listeners who, for the most part, declared Nixon the winner. The next time you jump to a conclusion, ask yourself, is it true, or do I just want it to be? The answer may come as a surprise.
All right, I wanted to start by showing you this video. This is a video of Tesla and their upcoming battery day, I guess. And CNBC, they brought some guest who was a person who was short the company, I believe, onto their show. And he reacted to the promises in the battery day or whatever. And he was willing to stick his neck out. He was willing to say some things on the show that was unpopular. And I wanted to show you some things that he didn't really get any of the respect that I think he was probably deserved. And you might see that, first of all, in this like-dislike ratio. Now, if you go down into some of the comments, I copied some of these, but there's a heck of a lot of comments that are like this one, yeah. I'll use this one, for example. Gordon Johnson equals Trevor Milton. Beware of these clowns. So he's comparing him to somebody else that they didn't like. This person, he said that there's so much hate in this analysis. This spin smells of shame, and that it was revolting to him. That he despised this guy's views. Yeah, this guy, he said, I seriously doubt this guy even has the mental capacity to understand what was presented at Battery Day. This guy, he went and looked him up, so he did some research on this guy, and he wanted to make sure everybody else knew it. Gordon is ranked number 5,999th out of 6,919 analysts, according to some website. So if you read through a lot of these comments, very few of the comments actually respond to the man's criticisms of the company. Instead, they dismiss them as outright fallacies because this guy has a negative view of the company and because it doesn't support their personal beliefs. In my opinion, all of these people here who are so devoted to the bull side of the bull case in their company, I think that they're going to lose money in the long run, or at the very least, they're certainly not going to beat the market, and that's my opinion. I also made a video talking about Tesla where I mostly had a bullish view of the company. My only real criticism of the company was the price. But even though that was the only thing that was really negative in my video about the company, I read through some of the comments, and it was very clear to me that not everyone, but a lot of the comments were from people that didn't even watch the video. So they came to my video just to attack me because I made a video about it, right? It's dumb. Now, I don't want to make it seem like I'm giving Tesla bulls a hard time either. There's some very informed Tesla bulls out there who, knowing a lot of the risks involved in their company, still decide to invest anyway, right? But what I wanted to say is that if you see any bear articles or bear videos on YouTube talking about a company, for example, some of the YouTubers I follow, where I watch some of their videos, they're usually bull only, but occasionally they might make a bear video. You'll notice that the like to dislike ratio on those bear videos are often very poor. Or if you read through the comments on those articles on Seeking Alpha where somebody has a bear view, they're usually they often have a tendency to attack the writer or whatever. And it's really disappointing to me because if you get to see the criticisms of a company, this can provide a lot of value to you, even if you are long to that company. Often when I like the idea or a product in a company, I decide to research it more. And what I notice is that sometimes it can be hard to actually find critical information on a company. You know, when you read a company's investor presentation, it's usually going to paint a very rose-colored picture of the company. It's often not going to even talk about the risks associated with the company at all. If you listen to the words of a CEO, they're almost always very positive for the company they're involved in. In fact, it's the CEO's job a lot of time to create a very positive image of his or her company. All of these kinds of materials and these sources are usually very biased. Now, for me, sometimes when I'm reading through a 10K or some other filings a company makes, sometimes there's information in there that can also be very hard to interpret. There might be some one-off charges or something like a depreciation cost it's hard for me to figure out, especially if I'm a generalist investor and I'm not heavily involved in that industry or that company that I'm looking at. Yeah. And sometimes there's just fundamental flaws in a company's idea, or there's structural problems in an industry. You know, sometimes there could be a really good competition that could undermine a particular company you might want to invest in. You know, figuring out all of these things on your own for every company and every industry, it's daunting. And I would suggest that it's almost impossible, especially if we're thinking about that confirmation bias, that video that I was thinking about. Yeah, no human knows all the knowledge in the world, and as human beings, we want to seek out information that confirms the view that we have already. One of the things that kind of bothers me is that bears are often attacked when they're providing a service. Yeah, I want to ask you guys this question. You know, how many people actively research companies they don't like? You know, I don't. If I invest or I research in things that I'm interested in, I research in things that I think are profitable, and I think that their ideas or their product or their business model makes a lot of sense. When I research a company that I'm interested in, maybe I might see a red flag or something that doesn't make sense to me in the company. And that usually is the conclusion of my research. Often I'll discontinue research in that company, and that investment idea fades from my memory. Often what I've discovered is not going to reach the eyes and ears of somebody who might be very bullish on that company. That risk that I may have seen is lost into to time. Yeah. Now, what's awesome about bears is they research companies, or they have a lot of knowledge in companies, probably despite not liking it. And you know, how many people are out there doing that? They bring all this knowledge. It's easy to dismiss straight to you. Now, the reason we invest is to make money, right? We shouldn't be ideologues. We shouldn't be really attached to any position if that position is going to cause us to lose money, right? Now, to maximize our profit and to minimize our losses, we really want to expose ourselves to opposing views, to bear views or short views and criticisms of these companies. Now, you know, when I make videos, like I said, I usually have a bullish view. And what's awesome about YouTube is that sometimes in the comments, I'll receive criticisms on my ideas. You know, I'm a human being. I'm not going to see everything out there, and I'm just as susceptible to confirmation bias as anyone. You know, and what's awesome about the comment section is sometimes you get to see those criticisms. You know, maybe I knew about that beforehand. Maybe I didn't know about it at all. And sometimes, you know, maybe I knew about a risk, but maybe there was maybe I underemphasized kind of the how risky this issue could be in a company, and it causes me to do a little bit more research on that. Yeah. Now recently I made a video on A2, and there was just a whole lot of awesome comments that highlighted some of the risks that I missed and that I decided to learn a little bit more about. You know, what's awesome about bearish views is that even once you hear them or once you're exposed to them, you still have the option to disagree with them. Right? You know, I might be like, hey, you know, that's a fair criticism, man. Yeah, I just think that maybe whatever your view is, that maybe it's overblown, or maybe I just, you know, I say, hey, you know, I just completely disagree with whatever your criticism is. It doesn't make sense to me. You know, and what that causes you to do, it causes you to have much more firm beliefs in whatever company that you're invested in. If you understand all the criticisms in that company, if that share price happens to go down, I really don't care. It doesn't. It makes me much more firm. It makes my hands much more diamond-like. I'll give you guys maybe an example. Last year, you know, when the oil industry was really suffering during all of the COVID lockdowns, one of the major criticisms of the oil industry during that time, one of the main bear cases I heard a lot of, was that the oil industry is in secular decline, right? That renewable technology is replacing oil, and to me that wasn't congruent with what I was seeing. To see that as one of the major criticisms of a lot of the companies I was invested in made me a lot more confident in my decisions. So I spent a lot of time researching tankers, oil tankers, and getting to know the industry, I think pretty well. And I remember sometime last year I was on Seeking Alpha, and I was reading a bear view from some guy. I think his name was Robert Baselgio, something like that. If you can go look him up. And he was short oil tankers at the time. I haven't followed him recently. I don't know if he still is or he isn't. But he wrote a lot of articles on it, and when reading them, a lot of the stuff I just didn't agree with. But when I kept following him, I was exposed to one idea that kind of changed my view on oil tankers. And it's kind of the crux to the investment thesis, is why you would want to be invested in oil tankers in the first place, right? It's that at some point that there's going to be an undersupply of vessels. Well, his idea was mainly that there's an oversupply of vessels on the market, and that, you know, there's still new builds coming on the market, and we're not seeing scrapping to kind of balance the kind of vessels that are coming in. And, you know, that caused me to research it more over several months. You know, I changed my views. I started to agree with them. You know, the oil tanker executives, they're going to paint a very rosy picture of what that industry looks like. They'll look and say, hey, look, the fleet age is way up there, but they're not showing you that they're not scrapping. So none of that matters if they're not going to there's not going to be an undersupply of vessels at some point. Now, I do think that there will be eventually, but it's going to have to come from scrapping, right? There's going to have to be an undersupply of vessels somehow, right? And that's why I really liked reading this article, is because over time, it caused me to concentrate on really the crux to my investment thesis and change my opinion. Now, if you're still here in this video, I want to ask you a favor. Next time you guys see a bear video or a bear article on a company that you're invested in, that you're reading, before you go and attack them, instead, I'd like you to think about some of the stuff that I said in this video. And instead, I'd like you to thank them for exposing you to an opposing view set. And again, you might disagree with them, which is fine, right? I think that it's pretty hard to make a bear case for almost anything out there. And I would imagine that there might be a lot of people that could provide a lot of value out there to long-only investors who probably just don't share their views on anything because they know that they're going to be attacked. So next time, you see a bear video, just say, hey, you know what? I disagree with you, man, but I'd like to thank you for exposing me to these opposing views. And I'm going to do that too. Anyway, I hope you guys have a great weekend. See you guys soon.